All right, well, we're here with Chevis Swetman from Swetman House. All right, Chevis, why don't you tell us about the day of the storm? What it was like here at the bank, and then the activities that led up to it.
Well, the day of the storm, the night before, my wife and my son, they came and spent the night here at the bank. I was going to stay here at the house and take care of anything in case anything happened. We had our dog Jake, and animals sort of do pretty good in the storm, believe it or not. And so when we thought the water was getting a little bit high, I tried to get Jake to go get into my Hummer and come to the bank, and Jake didn't want to go to the bank, so I told Jake, "Goodbye, Jake, it's been nice knowing you." And so I jumped in my Hummer and had an adventure trying to get here to the bank, and we stayed down here at the bank, and we were just talking around the area where we're at right now, and I said, it's not too bad. Water levels hadn't come up. Well, in about a minute and a half prior to that, the water levels had come up about 4 feet, and the cars in the parking lot were floating, and so we waited around till late that afternoon, and then we went back and checked on the house, and I expected to find poor Jake long gone, and he was in the backyard by the garage, just sitting wagging his tail. "Hey, where y'all been? I've been having a good time." So, but that was what it was sort of like. It was sort of an unusual experience. We had about maybe 35, 40 people living here at the bank, and we'd sleep at night and try and work during the day, and everybody ate real good after the storm because we were just cleaning out all of our refrigerators and stuff. So the steaks, the chicken, the fish, and everybody ate good right after the storm. But about 3 or 4 days later, we started running out of food. But we were able to find other food sources after that.
So talk about when you found your house.
Well, when I went back to the house, late that evening, I went back to the house, and it looked pretty good. When I went in the backside, because you couldn't go down to the beach because everything was blocked and with hurricane debris and all like that. So well, that doesn't look that bad till I went around to the front of the house, and we'd lost, probably the southwest corner of the house, and the house's back was broken. It was sort of, first and second stories were cantilevered toward the ground, and so at that particular point we thought we had lost the house. And after that we started making provisions to start taking down the trim that was on the inside of the house and some of the mantles and all of that stuff. And then we had a team from the Historic Preservation Trust came by, and a structural engineer and an architect. And I was down here at the bank, and they met with my wife, and they said, well, you can save this house. And so they talked to her, and about 2 or 3 weeks later, I was able, after we lost 9 of 16 branches, and after getting them back up and running, I met with the same team again, and they started telling us what we could do and how to save it. And he said, first thing you do is you hire a house mover. I said, a house mover? And they said, yeah, he's the guy that knows how to stabilize these old houses. And so that's what they did. They came in with an air bladder, and they pumped the house up, and then you're like a kid with Lincoln logs. They've got those railroad ties, and they keep taking those railroad ties and building up the corners of the house and getting it to a point where the house is there, the house is stable, and after that you can start going underneath the house and replacing the joists and the support beams, and so it was a really interesting experience. And if it hadn't have been for, I think, that historic preservation team that came into the area, our house would have been like so many of the other houses on the Gulf Coast that it would have been eventually torn down. But it was an old family homestead. We were able to restore it, and I tell everybody I gave my wife an unlimited budget, and she managed to exceed it.
Well, what about the next hurricane that comes through?
Well, the next hurricane, well, you know, we took the necessary steps in trying to make the house as secure as it ever could be. The structural engineer that had come by, we hired him, and we went back and we took the footings of our house and we reinforced it with concrete and steel. I think one of the issues that we had with an old home was the brick and mortar was 100 years old when the storm hit. Now, I don't know if you know anything about brick and mortar, but the mortar sometimes turns to sand, so we were able to, you know, structurally improve the foundation of the house. And then we had taken all the windows out, and we were going to have them worked out on some other place. And we thought that everything was doing pretty good. Then we said, well, you know, if we wrap the house in marine plywood, that'll make it even stronger and safer. So we did that, and then after we had spent the money rebuilding all the windows and got them back, we didn't think about that 1/4 inch thickness of the marine plywood. That meant none of the window casings would fit, so we had to have them reworked again. So, but you know, we were able to seal the house. We wrapped the house. It's pretty, you know, we think it's fairly safe. The only problem we're finding out today is the wood that we have on the market today is not as good as the wood that was 100 years old. So,
tell her about the plasterers.
Oh, the plasterers. Well, around here, when I first got into the house, we had a plasterer named Roman Pyramus from Pass Christian. Wonderful black man who'd picked up the trade for many, many years. And, you know, we had lost track of him after he had gone through most of the house and just did an excellent job. He just knew his craft so well. Well, come to find out that, you know, he even let me try and put a few pails of plaster into the wall, and I know I'm not a plasterer. So the next time around, when the house really needed to get repaired, there was nobody that knew how to plaster an entire house. And that's what we needed at our house, someone to plaster the entire house. So finally, we were able to get a grant from the Mississippi Historic Trust, and most of that went all for the plaster on the house. But I learned something. You've heard the term plastered? Well, that really applies to the plasterers, because the work they do in the morning is so far superior to the work that happens in the afternoon, because when they go to lunch, they have a little bit more than coffee and juice to drink. So I think that's the definition of how the word plastered came into existence. So, but you know, we finally went there. But they were there day in and day out, and it was, so I think we've got a good product. But yeah, what happens is the plasterers today. My original plasterer, he was the old time craftsman. He went back to the wood lathe base. Well, the plasterers today, nobody does plastering like that anymore. It's all Portland cement based with wire mesh on top of the wood lathe. But nobody knows how to plaster right on top of the wood lathe anymore. So. Yeah, and I do know the historic preservation people really like you go back to the wood lathe, and I would have loved to go back to the wood lathe, but there wasn't anybody in the community that knew how to do that anymore.
Ended up being sort of like an extended family, those workers.
Yes, they were there, and every week they got their paycheck, and you're right, it was an extended family.
Well, talk about the special nature of the house. It's It's been in your family.
Well,
right?
it's been in the family for well over 100 years. We trace it back to the time of the San Francisco fire and earthquake. The house that was there originally had been burned down, and my father's father, my grandfather had gotten a check for $1,000, and he told my grandmother that he had never thought he'd be worth this kind of money, so he was just going to keep the check and just sort of admire it for about a week or two. And she says, "Oh no, we're going to build this house right back." So they went ahead and deposited the check, and back then everything cleared by the railroads and stuff like that. So finally, a week or so after the check had cleared, they had the San Francisco fire and earthquake that busted most of the insurance companies in this country, and that's, because they would insure whole neighborhoods. So they didn't know how to do the true risk analysis, and so that's how we're able to trace the age of the house, was because we knew as soon as that check cleared, they had the San Francisco fire and earthquake, and then the house was able to be built because the check had been processed.
Okay, one more question. Just finish this sentence for me. The best thing about having my home back is?
Oh, the best thing? Well, it all depends on who you'd ask the question to. We have a big home on the beach, but and prior to Katrina, we had window units in our house, and so my wife would say that she liked the central air conditioning and the remodeling of the kitchen. The problem with the kitchen, though, is we did sort of a quick fix-up when we moved into the house in the early 70s, and just about the time we were going to do something with the kitchen, we'd be buying another bank or building another branch. So the kitchen always got put off and put off and put off. So at least now we've got the house fixed up, and she's got a kitchen she can live with.
Now, for you, the best thing is?
Just having the house back. I've gotten to the point where after the storm, we got a bid to redo the grounds, and the guy said, "We'll do everything, and we'll take care of resodding all the grass for $15,000." And I said, "That sounds like a lot for just laying grass." And so we started looking at how we could do it. So we had a couple of South Texans that were helping us, and with almost every second or third day, we'd go over and get about 3 or 4 pallets of grass, and we would lay it ourselves. And finally, when everything got said and done and the house was there, where I thought I might be able to save about maybe $8,000 on a $15,000 sod bill, it was about the same. I don't think I don't really, but I do love my grass. I do love this, and after it's cut, the birds and the squirrels are in the yard. Every morning, that is what I really like. And we've planted fruit trees and stuff. I've got figs, and we got lemons and pears. So
the tree you saved?
No, these are all new. And the tree we saved, we had the tree in the front yard. So it's a good thing.
Good. Well, thank you for spending time with us and telling us more of your story.